All right, let's welcome into Straight Fire one of the great guests in college football. It doesn't get much better than this. Reporter, sideline guy, columnist, TV analyst. I mean, he does it all. Bruce Feldman, California's finest. Bruce, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Jason. Good to be on with you.
Yeah. Obviously, Big Ten media days this week in college football. I know you're fired up. Interesting that they're having him in Vegas. You think Big Ten? You're like, oh, Michigan, Ohio State, but Vegas is an interesting choice, huh?
It is, but it gets you closer to, they added four West Coast schools, obviously the two LA schools, Washington and Oregon. So it's kind of Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten, probably trying to spread his empire a little
Mm.
further.
And they're flexing a little this week, right? Michigan won it, Ohio State won it, and it's kind of looking good for the Big Ten all of a sudden. Are they the premier conference in the country this coming season?
We'll see because obviously the Pac-12 went away and they took four schools from them, and that was a flex into it. And then it helped that obviously Michigan wins, as you said, and then Ohio State last year comes back to win. I don't know, is it Penn State's turn? Penn State feels like they're pretty loaded. I don't know if people are buying on Drew Allar just yet,
Yeah.
but the SEC had such a dominant run for a long
Mhm.
time. I think Texas is going to be really good. I don't know. It feels like Georgia and Alabama aren't quite where they were a few years ago. I think it's way more wide open these days than it was a few years ago, and it felt like it was like some version of Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, and
Yeah.
nobody else was within sniffing distance.
Yeah. Those were some lean years, it feels like, because it was only a small quadrant of the country that cared. I do look at that. Interesting you say Georgia. I looked at their schedule. So they don't face LSU and they get their other three tough matchups all at home. I just wonder, are we sleeping on Georgia just a little? I know the quarterback doesn't have the name recognition of the guy that they had last year, who was a bust, by the way. He's now at Miami, I believe. I don't know. Are we sleeping on Georgia? They have the second best odds to win the Natty for what it's worth.
They still have a lot of really good players, but most of their roster is like first and second year players. The new quarterback's Gunnar Stockton. He jumped in when Carson Beck got
Yeah.
hurt in the SEC title game, and I know they like him, but it's not like the SEC is loaded with experienced quarterbacks. And if you were to rank them, Gunnar Stockton would be nowhere near right now, at least the top five or even probably the top 10. They
Oh,
added a bunch of receivers in the portal. What hurt Georgia last year, I thought a lot, was you lose a generational tight end playmaker in Brock Bowers, and you also lost a really good second receiver in Lad McConkey. Those guys both did awesome in the NFL. Georgia really missed them. Carson Beck really missed
yeah.
them. And, I think they're still really talented. We'll see how it plays out. Again, a lot of it is going to come back to, I think, the quarterback play and how good can they be on offense. I don't think they're as going to be as dominant as they were, back when they won back-to-back national titles, where they were just cranking out front seven guys. I mean, they had a couple of first-round picks last year, in the defense, and it's not like they're always going to have players. I just
Mhm.
think they were better positioned a few years ago than they were
Yeah.
right now.
It's interesting you say that losing guys and the quarterback struggling without question. Gunnar Stockton, he's not a top five guy in the SEC. I guess my thing would be like, was Will Howard projected top five last year in the Big Ten? I mean, I remember the Michigan game where he was terrible. He may have been concussed, but I was like, you can't win a national championship with Will Howard. And then, of course, they go on the amazing run. Can you win it with an okay quarterback and a six skill position group? Because JJ McCarthy, who was a first round pick, I don't think many people thought he was like an elite quarterback. Did they? I'm forgetting already
I think
because
it's what it fit with him. He could make some plays with the legs. He was pretty accurate on the run, but they were going to grind you out. They were going to win differently than Ohio State did. Now, look, what Ohio State had last year around Will Howard was they had two high-level running backs and they had two elite receivers. J.J. Smith, a true freshman last year, he won't even be in the next draft. He's probably the most talented player in college football last year.
yeah,
You add that with a very good defense. I mean, was he CJ Stroud? No, but the supporting cast was better. And I think all those pieces kind of came together. It helps if you're going to be Joe Burrow like 2019 LSU, but I
yeah.
think that's kind of a mix of what you really get, which, Nick Saban won a bunch of championships. He won one with Greg McElroy. He won another one with
Hmm.
Oh God, I'm blanking on even the quarterback who transferred from Florida State, who really didn't spend any time in the NFL.
Jacob
I want
Coker.
to Jacob Coker. Thank you. I was going to say
Jacob.
Jacob
Okay.
Eason, but it was
Close. He had a big arm. Yeah, 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 yeah.
he did, but it's like very, you can win if you have that much talent around them
Mm,
and they are more in the game manager mode. Will Howard was a pretty good running quarterback and
he
he had a
was, yeah.
lot of experience. So I think it depends what you surround him with. But if you're on a team where you're really gonna lean on him a lot more, then I think it's different equation.
Yeah, it's 5 minutes and I haven't even asked about Arch Manning. I'm just curious. You do a lot of radio, TV, podcasts, all this stuff. Is Arch Manning by far and away the number one topic in college football coming into the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think in large part because of what his last name is. He's the next Manning.
Yeah.
And I think because there's so much intrigue because he plays physically differently than his two uncles. He's much more of a dynamic athlete than Peyton and Eli ever were. He's probably a lot more like his grandfather Archie in terms of how he plays. But the people I talk to at Texas inside the program who I trust, they've raved about him for the last year and a half
Mm,
about how football smart he is, the way he can relate to players, and also he's got a really high level of athleticism. Now he has only played really a couple of games, and they got to replace four starters on the O line. That's a big challenge, and they're going to open
mm,
against Ohio State. But in
yeah.
terms of the intrigue and the buzz around him, I will say this. I did a big story talking to both his parents about like what it's like to raise Arch Manning.
Hmm.
And when your son is going to be super famous, especially if he plays the position, they're the first family of football. And what's different about him than his uncles was he was growing up in the age of social media when everybody has a smartphone and all these other challenges that come with it. That story was this as is right now the second most read story I've ever done at The Athletic. Now I got
Wow.
to,
I did read it for what it's worth. Second most. Holy,
yeah,
what's number one?
it was a story I did on the Mike Leach's first coaching staff, which just had a ton of crazy stories to it,
Wow.
and it just had a long shelf life. But next
Mm.
to that story, and this Arch Manning story's only been out for like a month, just the numbers were insane. Now, again, his parents were very candid with me, and I think that helped. It wasn't just
Mm.
like, just basically a listicle about why people think he's good. It was a little more involved in that, but still, there is so much intrigue about Arch. And again, I think he takes over a program right now that is in a really good position to make a run at a national title, something they
Mm.
haven't done in a generation now.
Wow. Now that's interesting because I look at that matchup with Ohio State, and it looks like some money's come in on Texas. It was 4.5 for Ohio State, now down to 3. I think Arch could be in for a world of hurt. Like opening game at Ohio State, defending champs. You got
Four
Matt
new starting
Patricia,
linemen too on top of that.
4 new that's huge. 4 starters on the O line are gone. And then Matt Patricia has an entire summer to basically cook up exotic defenses. He's got arguably the best chess piece defensively in the country, right? In downs.
Downs. Yeah,
I
he's a
mean,
terrific safety.
I don't see like in my I'm envisioning like a 34-14 Ohio State beatdown, and everybody has questions about Arch, and then he has a rate rest of the season. It's really early, but I'm just curious. We're 5 weeks out. Any early thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I would lean towards Ohio State because it's in Columbus. They have the best player in the college football on the offense, and I would argue probably the best player on defense in Caleb Downs. And they have a lot of talent around there. Now they have to replace both coordinators. Chip Kelly's with the Raiders now. Jim Knowles is now at Penn State. So those are adjustments for them. They're breaking in a new quarterback, but the home field advantage I think is significant. Like what you said, even if they lose, and this being Texas, last year Ohio State lost the last regular season game, and that wasn't even their only loss. They had lost earlier on the road to Oregon. I mean, in this day and age with the playoff, you can stub your toe twice and still make the playoff. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a thing where they and Arch, grow a lot as the year goes on. As long as he's still healthy, I think they're going to be a really dangerous team because they're really good. I think they're better on defense this year
Hmm.
than they were last year. And I do think they still have a lot of firepower and a lot of talent. And Sark is really good as a play caller.
I know you're all over this Elite 11. You've been chronicling it for years. This Drew Allar stuff at Penn State. I It's tough, man. That Notre Dame game was just brutal for him last year. The interception basically cost him the game. He looks the part, right? A big strapping dude, big
Yeah,
arm, which is
6'5", 240, moves pretty good. Yeah.
everybody loves him. I You've seen him a lot longer than I have. I'm just curious. What are we supposed to make him? He could be the first overall pick next whatever the draft is next April, or he could be like a fourth round pick, and neither would surprise me.
Yeah, I would be lean towards the former than the latter. I don't think he's going to be like a fourth round talent just because the traits wise, he's really big. He's got a very good arm. Everybody who's worked with him says he sees the field really well. And I think the other thing that probably you can talk yourself into is, unlike a lot of those Elite 11 quarterbacks, he didn't really start playing the position at an extremely young age. So when he's in high school, he's still kind of acclimating. His first year as a starter was just the year before last. I think it was like 25 touchdowns, 3 picks. His numbers were pretty impressive for a first-time starter. Last year they had Tyler Warren, terrific tight end. They did not have a lot of good receiving help on the outside. So I think that didn't do him any favors. But I'm with you on the part where, man, he had his chance to have that like kind of big coming out moment
Mm-hmm.
and he struggled. But now let's see what he does this year. I do think he's got some, like a first round profile. We'll see if he can back it up because they made it far in the playoff. It wasn't like they just snuck in, right? And
Yeah,
I I think the expectation will be they will play for the national title, whether they win it or not. But they have a loaded defensive line. Jim Knowles is a really good defense coordinator who comes in, two elite running backs. They added a really good receiver from Syracuse, who's more of a slot receiver, who I think will be a go-to guy for Allar. They're one of the most intriguing teams in college football for a lot of the reasons we're talking about.
damn. I'm looking at the schedule. What a start for Franklin. Nevada, FIU, Villanova. Bye week, Oregon. So
Yeah.
basically, they get like 4 weeks of prep for that Oregon matchup, and that's it in Beaver Stadium. They do have to go to Ohio State, which will be tough. But otherwise, yeah, is Sparty going to be any good this year? I'm not down to. I'm not up on them
Their
yet.
their quarterback in Childs he came with Jonathan Smith from Oregon State. He's from here in Southern California. He's from
Okay.
Downey. He's really talented. I mean, he's got one of the best arms in college football. He runs well. He was a kid who was starting to blow up in the recruiting process late. I think even like Notre Dame tried to come in late. He decided he wanted to stick by Oregon State, and then when they all made the move to East Lansing, the biggest challenge for him is just taking care of the football. He's still a really young quarterback.
Mm.
Last year was his first full season as the starter. I know they're very optimistic about him. Traits wise, he has NFL talent. It's just as he matures, does he do a much better job taking care of the football? If he can take the big next step, I think they have a chance to be a top 25 team. I mean, when you see him, I went out to Corvallis a couple of years ago. This is when DJU transferred from Clemson
Mm.
to there. And I remember going there and I was like, this other guy, who is this guy? He throws it better than any of the quarterbacks they had. And they had another kid who had actually started half the season. So it wasn't like he walked into a quarterback room that nobody had anything. I mean, DJU was a five-star who was getting offers when he was in
Yeah.
ninth grade. Has is a big, powerful arm. I think he's in Rams or Chargers camp now. But like Childs' arm was wow when you saw it. And it was just like you come out of there. He was still, he's an early enrollee. Now he's in East Lansing. I think there's reason for those fans to be excited about him,
Okay.
but he has to take care of the football a lot
Yeah.
better.
Somebody had told me you schedule a national championship. Obviously, that was a few years ago. Somebody smart. And I'm looking at the Georgia schedule, and I like them a lot. This Penn State schedule, they get a bye before Oregon and before Ohio State. That is smart scheduling on the part of Penn State. I mean, you're right. They could run the table. Maybe I'm missing an opportunity on the Nittany Lions here.
Yeah, but I think after last year, Jason, I don't think you need to run the table. I mean, Ohio State, everybody was off the bandwagon after that horrible loss at home against a pretty mediocre Michigan team. I think if you're going to bounce around like that, again, they're lost, no shame to losing at Oregon the way they did it based on the last play. But I think if you're going to lose a couple times, you do need really good leadership to kind of keep the big picture going. I think the idea of going 16-0, like LSU ran the table when it was 15-0, when it
Mhm.
was Joe Burrow and the best offensive team probably college football has ever seen. But I think we're going to see a lot more of like teams like Ohio State that have blemishes that end up making it to the finish line just because it's such a long season. And the other thing I would stress is now in this day and age, these teams come together so late because you have so many portal additions. You don't just have like 25 freshmen, you probably have 40 to 45 newcomers every year. And I think the lack of continuity, I just think teams are going to be a lot more inconsistent earlier in the year.
Mhm. Speaking of coming together, do we need to talk about Texas Tech? I was really not aware of the great stuff they had done, and then somebody pointed it out to me, and I was like, "Wow, this is fascinating." Where are they on your? I know it's the Arch Manning season, but is Texas Tech like a sleeper? Hey, you might want to put a couple bucks on them in Vegas to get to the playoff.
Well, they spent a lot of bucks. Cody
Yeah,
Campbell was a former Texas Tech offensive lineman in the Mike Leach days. He ended up becoming a billionaire in the oil and energy business, and he's put his money where his mouth is. And they've gone more aggressively in the portal than anybody. So
yeah.
you saw them gobbling up, especially the linemen, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, a bunch of good linebackers. I mean, they've upgraded the roster in a big way. I think the challenge here is Baron Morton. He's the quarterback who was there already and he's
Mm.
played a lot and he's been solid. Does he take the next step with the talent around him? Because as we saw last year, there's no conference that's more up for grabs than the Big 12, right? Arizona State preseason picked to finish last. They end up not only winning the conference, they almost beat Texas in the playoff.
Yeah.
I think Texas Tech is a dangerous team. I'm the biggest question is Joey McGuire, the head coach, who was a really good Texas high school football coach. He had some talent in the last few years, and they've been decent. But I think people are like, can he be the guy to lead them, not only into the playoff, but deep into the playoff?
Yeah, I'm looking at the schedule. I don't see any. I mean, who's the toughest? I mean, they got to go. I guess at Utah is never easy. Um, is Kansas State going to be good this year? Oklahoma
Kansas State's
State.
Kansas State to me is the closest thing to a sure thing in the Big 12, where they're not going to be bad. You feel like, and they have Avery Johnson, who's a dynamic running quarterback who people are excited about, and he's physically gotten a lot stronger this offseason. I feel like Kansas State is probably if you said who has the best chance to win at least 8 games in that
Mm.
league, I would always say Kansas State.
BYU just landed. I saw the news today that they landed the transfer quarterback.
No,
I'm
backwards.
sorry, they
Jake
lost it. They
Retzloff
lost it. Yeah, yeah.
is transferring to Tulane. He will. I'm told he will get there actually on Tuesday.
Interesting. So, how good is this guy, by the way?
He's talented now. I mean, he led them to an 11-win season last year in his first year as a full-time starter. He was really banged up in the second half of the year. Like I know some guys on that staff, they're like, there's probably a couple of games he probably shouldn't have played, but he kind of gutted it out.
Mm.
He's a good running quarterback who has a pretty live arm. He plays with a chip on his shoulder, but his accuracy can be a little spotty. And also, he's got some gunslinger in him, which means
Mm.
you'll get some turnovers. But he's he's one of the better quarterbacks in college football. Now, he's going to have a crash course at Tulane in about 40 days to get ready for their opener. He's one of 5 transfer quarterbacks they took this offseason. They
Tulane?
lost their quarterback who got a bunch of money to go to Duke. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that Retzloff's actually more talented than the guy who went to Duke. But again, he's going to learn this offense or has to
Mm.
learn the offense really fast to get them ready. I think the hope for him is at least he's ready by the conference season, maybe if he's not ready for the opener.
Dude, that's tough. So, you're telling me they got 4 new quarterbacks and then they just added another guy?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not right. I mean, I'm sure a couple of those guys thought transferring in would be the move for them.
I'm
They
sure
would have
they
a
did, but John Summerall is the coach there, and I think he's a big believer. Is like, hey, I'm all for players getting paid, and all for players getting taken care of, but just
Mhm.
know that I'm going to try to have the most competitive position rooms and team I can get. And I think those guys are cool with it. Retzloff's actually going to Tulane as a walk-on. He's not going on scholarship,
Oh,
and
wow.
so he's really talented. There was a bunch of group power conference schools that I was told were interested in him. till the towards the end. But he'll end up going to Tulane, where Summerall was actually when he was at Troy, the head coach a few years ago. They thought they were going to get Retzloff committed out of junior college, and then at the last minute,
Oh.
BYU swooped in and were able to land him.
So I'm sure some people are like, well, what's so special about this guy? The honor code violation, has all that stuff come out? Because I've been reading a little bit
Yeah, I
about it.
think it's, from what we heard, it was he had consensual sex there, and that's you can't do that at
Yeah.
BYU. It's part of the honor code.
And so I'm
You
surprised
know that
more
going
teams
in.
weren't
So
up on him, like for him to fall to Tulane. Well, if he was that good, why didn't
I
Tennessee
think
or
if
so?
this all had happened, Jason, back in January or
Okay.
earlier in the spring, I think you would have had more of those schools,
Mm,
go in. Honestly, if he was available back when Nico left Tennessee to go to UCLA, I think Tennessee would be more likely to go after Jake Retzlaff than Joey Aguilar, the quarterback who had been at App State and then went to UCLA for a couple of months. I'd be surprised if they would have said, "Oh yeah, we're going to take Aguilar over Retzlaff."
let me go ACC. We haven't done anything. This Cade Klubnik love. I don't know, man. I know guys like him. Bruce, you do your freaks list. You do a lot of stuff with the draft. Is Cade Klubnik a really, really good college football quarterback, or do you see him as like elite and he's going to be a first round pick? Because I got to be honest, I don't know, man. I haven't seen it. Maybe I haven't seen it yet.
I think he's a really, really good quarterback. I don't know if that makes him just a really good college quarterback or more.
Mm,
He was a really high, he's an Austin, Texas kid he was one of those Elite 11 kids. He, coming out of high school, it had a little bit of a shaky start, but I don't think they had really great talent around him, especially a
mm,
receiver. Back when it was Taj Boyd and Deshaun Watson and
yeah.
Trevor Lawrence, Clemson had studs at receiver. They didn't for a while. Now all of a sudden it's getting back to that. I do think he's a first round kind of quarterback. He's accurate. I think he's really smart. I think he sees the field well. I mean, he's not overwhelmingly physically, got the he's not Anthony Richardson in terms of just
Mm.
as a specimen, but could he be a Kirk Cousins? Yeah, I could totally see that.
It's interesting because Dabo's kind of, his insistence on we're not hitting the portal for so many years. Clemson's fallen back a little, and by fallen back, I mean they're 10 wins and not like 13 and competing for the Natty. It sounds like he's changed his tune a little bit though, huh?
A little. They took a defensive end from Purdue who will start for them. I mean, look, don't be surprised if Clemson ends up in the national title game.
Oh, come on.
No,
Really?
I'm telling you, they have a bunch of
What?
dudes who will be first round picks on the defense. They have a dynamic freshman running back to add in. The receivers are really good. I'm not, I'm, this team has enough talent to win a national title.
Hmm. Wow. I was all excited for UNC and Belichick. I mean, it's
Listen,
really
check back with me on the Clemson D line, Clemson defensive players when you talk draft next spring. I'm telling you, there's going to be a bunch of
they're
dudes
loaded.
top 50.
Um, I forgot to mention Belichick. I mean, Belichick was such a hot button issue for months, Bruce. And then I guess, the girlfriend thing, it became a little too much. It's really been shut down. I haven't seen or heard a peep out of UNC for the last month, right?
Yeah, and I think some of that has been, I think a lot of us like to compare, oh, there's going to be like a similar vibe to Dion coming to Colorado and it's must-see TV and everything. And while there's intrigue, what I think is different is when Dion came from Jackson State, he brought his son to be his quarterback and he brought the number one recruit in the country a few years earlier, Travis Hunter. So you had star power and there was a lot of social media buzz about it because they opened up and they showed a lot of people what was going on with all the videos and different things that they were putting on YouTube. North Carolina's not that way. I mean, Bill Belichick wasn't even like putting, jersey names and numbers, for the spring game. And it's all been under wraps. Like I know the quarterback that they took, Gio Lopez. He started out at South Alabama. He's a really good quarterback in the Sun Belt. But
Mhm.
I think for a lot of people, they do not know who most of these players are. And by the way, unlike Dion, he didn't. Belichick's taking over a program that had some decent seasons. It wasn't like they were a
Yeah.
one-win team like Colorado was. They were decent, and they've obviously whether it's Sam Howell or Drake May
Drake May.
or Amari and Hampton, they've had high level talent. So I think that adds to it. And it's also just like you said, I think there's been so much attention has ended up like pivoting over to what's going on with he and his girlfriend, who's 50 years younger. And I think it became kind of a very tabloid story, but I'm not sure the real sports world has kind of gravitated to
Yeah.
that.
It's funny, Alabama for the longest time was on top of college football. Bruce, we just did 25 minutes, no mention of the Tide. Like, is that? I know you're a Kalen DeBoer guy, you know him well. He's got an uphill climb, and I've seen some of the numbers about Alabama just not being able to kind of back it up with the NIL money that some of these other programs are. Any thoughts on the Tide? Is their kind of reign of terror fading fast, or not really?
We'll see what happens this year. I mean, they have one of the, probably five or six most talented players on offense, and Ryan Williams,
Mm-hmm.
who graduated high school the year earlier and made a splash last year. The new quarterback, Ty Simpson, who's a coach's kid. And I think internally they like him a lot. He's not as dynamic as Jalen Milroe, but I think he will be good in the system. I think the biggest reason for optimism, if you're an Alabama fan, is that Ryan Grubb, who is really a protege of DeBoer. They were together at Sioux Falls and NII when they were winning national titles, and he was also the play caller and the guy behind that Washington offense that played for the national title. And Michael Penix became a top 10 pick. He was 1 year in the NFL as an offensive coordinator with the Seahawks. Now he comes back to DeBoer. He'll be in the SEC, and I think that'll be a really good thing, not just for the offense, but really for DeBoer to have.
Mm,
I think somebody who knows him really well. They know each other, what they're looking for, and they're enough. They're talented enough where they're a national title contender. The parts that I think hurt them last year, they were wildly inconsistent on both sides of the
yeah.
ball, and we'll see. Now he's had a year. This is much more his program than it was
Yeah.
probably a year ago at this time.
Jalen Milroe, I'll never forget that game against Georgia. He was unbelievable. And then the Oklahoma game, he's just like
Yeah,
unwatchable.
Tennessee game, he was really
Tennessee, yeah.
struggled. I mean, really bad offense. And so you got to see both sides of it. When he's on, I remember watching him against LSU. It was 2 years ago, he and Jaden Daniels had a spectacular
Oh, that's
like
right.
back
Yeah.
and forth where you're watching, incredible athlete who can run, but also make plays downfield. And I thought, he's going to be fascinating to see how he kind of develops into an NFL quarterback as well.
Yeah. All right. Bruce Feldman, Fox, The Athletic. Enjoy Vegas. I mean, what's it going to be like 110 there? I mean,
Last year was
goodness
like
gracious.
118. I was in an Uber going somewhere, and I said to the driver, I was like, "Is it really 121 degrees?" He goes, "No, that's my clock. But it's 121." He goes, "But it is 118 degrees." I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes a
Oh,
difference."
man. Wow. Well, try to have some fun out there, man. All right,
We
Bruce.
will.
Thanks a lot.